Do you know what you, Taylor Swift, Dwayne Wade, and your favorite grade school teacher have in common? We're going to answer that today using real social scientific evidence. Let's start with hater-ithmetic. So I think there's a general wisdom out there, and indeed it may be a social fact, that a certain percent of people that you encounter in life are just going to be dicks. I am far from unschooled or unfamiliar with getting negative feedback. Like, academia is pretty much propped up by criticism. That's like the whole foundation of peer review. As a prof, I've been teaching for about 20 years now, and I tend to get pretty good student feedback.
Brag.
There's always a small percentage of students that I cannot make happy. Lectures, too long. The reading, 0 out of 10. Slides, too busy or too many serifs on the fonts. Like, they hate everything about the course. And that's fine. Like, that's completely legitimate. And I'm sorry. I wish you liked the course better. But I think the point is that you can't really please everyone. And indeed, there's always going to be a minority of people that are just going to hate everything about you. They're haters. Excitingly, I found a study, a computer science study, that actually has some research behind the numbers. And in it, the authors measured what they called antisocial behavior online in places like Reddit. So by antisocial behavior, we're not talking about commentators who just simply disagree with your poster or have a different take on things like recent 90-day tell-all. The researchers found is that approximately 5% comments across 97 communities were in violation of norms of these communities by, for instance, personally attacking people, venturing into sexist and racist language. If 20 people were to watch this video and leave a comment, we would expect that one of the 20 comments would be pure hateration. And if that is you, just click away. I'll give you a second. 1 out of 20 comments is pretty manageable, though I don't want it. Hate-arithmetic scales, which means that the more popular you are, the more hate you're likely to attract. Imagine that this video gets viewed and commented on by 120,000 people. That would mean that there were 6,000 comments coming for me. Now imagine you're Taylor Swift. She's probably getting hate left, right, up, down, all over the place, all times of the day, even 7 a.m. Hate-arithmetic, that 5%, that relates to the proportion of hate you can expect. But then there's, of course, the whole separate issue of what you're getting hate for. In Taylor Swift's case, she's been criticized for pretty much everything. Her carbon footprint, friendships, for her politics, both in terms of when she speaks out or when she chooses to remain silent. And indeed, the criticism of Taylor Swift is so frequent, it's quite rare to see her directly address any of this. It actually made the news. Time magazine ran this headline, and the article references a time when, during an interview, Taylor called out what she considered unfair criticism of her work. She's quoted as saying, "You're going to have people who say, oh, she just writes songs about her ex-boyfriends. And I think, frankly, that's a very sexist angle to take. No one says that about Ed Sheeran. No one says that about Bruno Mars. They're all writing songs about their exes, their current girlfriends, their love lives, and no one raises a red flag there." What Taylor is describing here, if true, is a double standard. A double standard is when expectations and rules are enforced differently, often more harshly, for one group of people over another. In this case, T-Swizzle is claiming that she's not the only one writing about her dating life. Ed Sheeran and Bruno Mars are writing about their dating life as well. But only Tay-Tay is getting called out for it, ostensibly because she's a woman. Same behavior, different response. Classic double standard. And this isn't restricted to the music field. There's this famous article that came from a sociological study of men and women's salaries in academia. Written by Fox, she observed that while both men and women received pay that rewarded their achievements, so no free rides here, okay? She also found that men were rewarded at a higher rate than their female colleagues. It's tough out there. But we're talking about men and women in the academy in the 1970s. Surely we don't have double standards nowadays, do we? Let's turn to a completely different world of celebrity couples. And tell me if you remember this. It was 2007, and Demi Moore had just married a much younger man. She was 40, he was 25. 15-year age gap. The media went crazy. They were reporting on this 15-year age gap like fire had been raining down from the sky, but more judgment and sexism. I'm sure we can think of many other examples of men who were older dating younger women at the time, but that was totally normalized. Same behavior, different judgment. Classic double standard. Things have changed. The age gaps where women are older than men in the relationship are really more commonplace now. So for instance, Priyanka Chopra is 10 years older than Nick Jonas. Megan Mullally and Nick Overman have a 12-year gap between them. Dwayne Wade and Gabrielle Union, she's 10 years older. And of course, these age gaps do get mentioned, but maybe it's like the second or third thing that gets mentioned, rather than being a characteristic that defines them as a couple. Meanwhile, Brad Pitt is currently dating someone who's 30 years younger than him, twice the gap between Demi and her ex, but crickets. So the double standard is still there, it's just maybe a little bit more flexible. So double standards are pervasive, they're unfair, and they're sociological, meaning that we have expectations of how people are supposed to act based on social categories, race, gender, sexuality, class, etc. The groups that we sort people into and the meanings we assign to them aren't things that we decide as individuals. These are lessons we are taught as members of a society. Now let's move to a research question inspired by, and in some ways posed by, Taylor Swift herself. When we last left her, she was describing being criticized for writing about her personal life in her music, whereas male musicians were not subjected to the same judgments. True to form, our favorite single cat lady then channeled this experience into The Man, in which he sings, "I'm so sick of running as fast as I can. Wonder if I'd get there quicker if I were a man." If this were a research question we're interested in is whether being a man or being a woman influences how quickly one would become the man. Let's visualize this. On the x-axis here, we have the work. This includes putting out music, writing songs, including writing about their personal lives in their music. On the y-axis, you would have the status, legitimacy, and this arbitrary point, one becomes a man. And the question then is, do men, male musicians, get to man status faster than women, even when they're doing the same thing? If things were equal, men and women would have the same slope. The line would look the same. But if men get there quicker, the slope of the line would be sharper, and they would arrive at man status more quickly than women. And women would have to keep running and put in the work for longer to achieve the same level of recognition. So that's the research question. I wonder if they would get there faster if they were men. Well, the good news is, with social science, we don't have to wonder. Why wonder when you can read real empirical studies of analogous cases to draw some sort of inference? Time to put this piece of pop culture through the sociological meat grinder. Let's see if we can't get some clarity. There's a recent peer-reviewed study called Gendered Pathways to Perpetual Fame, and it was written by Gina Lee. The study's about elite novelists in Korea. So you can think of these people as like the Taylor Swifts or Ed Sheerans of Korean literature. Specifically, she looks at how professional critics wrote about men and women who used their personal lives in their creative work. Critics flagged men and women writers pretty equally, and it was seen as a positive thing, so not really a criticism at all. But the outcome and the importance of the work that men and women produced get described and valued really, really differently. So when women draw on their personal lives in their works, critics describe their books as good for showing diverse aspects of femininity, or lauded them as a good example of women's literature. For men, the autobiographical elements of their books were described as helping us to understand the universal human experience. Both of them are positive, but one is considerably more grandiose than the other. Lee's study also looks at the reviews that men and women have received throughout their careers. Getting a positive reviews is a good predictor for whether an author will go on to be considered an elite writer. So what does that mean exactly? Well, when sociologists talk about elite writers, we're thinking of people who are going to be taught in college syllabi or included in literary anthologies. And remember that graph? Remember we talked about the different slopes? Here's what Lee found. It was that for men, each review increased the odds of becoming the man by 7.2%. For women, each review increased the odds by only 3.4%. So what this means practically is that women have to get almost twice as many reviews as men to be seen as equally important as a writer. Equivalent talent, equivalent achievements yielding unequal rewards. That's a double standard. The difference isn't about good versus bad artists. All of these novelists are at the tippy top of their fields. Instead, the difference really is between being considered good versus being considered great. Do we have good data for making sense of the man hypothesis? These trends definitely confirm what have been observed in other creative fields and occupations. So based on that, can we say that Taylor would get there quicker if she were a man? Yep. By the way, I'm not trying to say that Taylor Swift is a total victim here. Double standards cut both ways. She might be subject to some criticisms unfairly because she's a woman, but at the same time, she likely benefits from the fact that she is white and she comes from a privileged background, and even the fact that she's American and sings in English, right? So double standards aren't rare. From academic salaries to dating to elite Korean novelists, double standards, they are the norm. In fact, I'd go as far to say that double standards are the standard in social life rather than the exception. What do you, Taylor Swift, Dwayne Wade, and your favorite grade school teacher all have in common? You're all subject to double standards. We hold each other accountable to double standards. We even do it to ourselves. Practical takeaway, if you're going to criticize yourself, maybe take a moment and think, is this due to a generic social double standard that I've learned? Because I think that if you're going to have a bad time and you're going to criticize yourself, at the very least, it should be because you've done something that contravenes your own personal values. 5% of people are going to come for you for no good reason. Don't add to the numbers. Don't do it. So I'm curious, what double standards do you catch yourself policing, either for yourself or for others? Hype. Anyways, if you like today's essay, like and subscribe to get an alert for the next time. Until then, stay safe and stay curious.